2022 has come to a close and the new year has dawned on us with its excitement and infinite possibilities. The day is set. It's about that time of year when the Watches and Wonders show in Geneva, Switzerland kicks up between March 27 and April 2nd, and as expected, Rolex will be there. But it's got us all thinking. Would customers be treated to an uninspiring array of options, or would the year be flashy with trendy models? While all of this would be revealed on that fateful day, here are some of the things Rolex may likely have in store for us over the next 12 months. You may or may not be a fan of the Rolex brand, but one thing you'd be hard-pressed not to admit is that 2022 was far from being an uneventful year for the luxury watch manufacturer. We saw a couple of notable released watches during the previous year, like the Rolex Air King with its reference 126900, which greatly benefited from the brand getting a dapper new case design with crown guards and, of course, the new generation caliber 3230 movement. Another good watch that caught so many eyes was the GMT Master 2 with the reference 126720 VTNR, which owned the title of the first ever GMT Master 2 to have the date and crown window on the left-hand side. So, what kind of watches should we expect this year from Rolex? This may be the year for sport watch models to have more precious and luxurious metals. Let's take the Yachtmaster, for example. It's one of the most diverse collections from Rolex, with so many different possibilities. You have 3 shades of gold that you can pick from, and plus, you still have the option to have it in steel or platinum. All of the current gold Yachtmaster references in production have a common denominator. They all have black rubber Oysterflex bracelets and black Cerachrome ceramic bezels. With that in mind, we kind of expect Rolex to come out this year with full gold options. After all, when you think about the model that defines what an ultra-luxurious sports watch is from the brand, you'd be hard-pressed not to say it is the Yachtmaster. Having a completely gold model iteration sounds like a no-brainer. Before we go into our next prediction, do you remember some of the two-tone sports watches released by Rolex that basically sent shockwaves to everyone? In 2019, the brand released the two-tone stainless steel and yellow gold Rolex Sea Dweller. 2 years after that, they introduced the two-tone yellow gold and stainless steel Explorer. While it may be just a coincidence, you'd notice that there seemed to be a 2-year interval in between them. And guys, let's be frank, the chances of this happening this year are quite high, especially when you consider the Rolex Air King got updated last year. With that in mind, would you really be surprised if Rolex introduced a two-tone stainless steel and yellow gold version of the Air King this year? Moving on, the long-awaited 60th anniversary of the fan-favourite Rolex Daytona chronograph will be marked this year. Of course, just like every brand in such a position, Rolex is more than expected to make something special to commemorate the milestone. So why not a dapper green dial? It's also quite practical to say the least. In the past, Rolex has made green versions to mark other anniversaries. Watches like the Submariner 16610 LV had a green bezel version, and hey, the Say-Date 40 with the reference 228239 also came with olive green dials. This may be a wild prediction, but we kind of think Rolex may be cooking up some Cellini models behind the scenes. Yes, you probably already know Rolex has discontinued all of the models in the collection bar, including the moon phase watch, but that's precisely why we may be getting some new Cellini timepieces this year. What's a collection without having other models in it? However, Rolex has a couple of options here. They can either give us a 39mm round Cellini with a different complication, like a triple calendar, or choose the path that leads to introducing a new round piece. If you are a fan of having bigger watches on your wrist, listen closely, as you surely would love to hear this. The Rolex Daytona may just be getting a bigger version. Let's take a brief minute to put yourself in the shoes of Rolex. In order to keep up with the time, how would you build upon a modern Rolex Daytona? The watch already has a modern ceramic bezel. It's perfect the way it is. However, the size leaves a couple of things wanting. If Rolex can expand the case to 41mm, they could easily satisfy everyone. And also, given how they're in charge of the build process, they can make their own rules for how they want it to be measured. Watches like the current Submariner, the Oyster Perpetual, and the Datejust 41 have a 41mm measurement, but if you closely inspect them, they appear quite smaller. That's the sort of tweaking they can execute if they don't want to change things so much. What do you think though? Could we actually get a 41mm Rolex Daytona this year? Moving on, let's talk about the Milgauss line. If you're a true Rolex faithful, you'd know they have some of the most winding histories out of all other current production Rolex models. After being first released in 1956 with a rotating bezel, Rolex later introduced a lightning bolt for a second hand and a totally different smooth fixed bezel with straight seconds hand. Not too long ago, the Milgauss was indirectly discontinued, only to make a comeback in 2007 with a striking new design. One of our predictions for what Rolex has in store for enthusiasts this year is offering a shake-up to the adventurous Milgauss. There are two realistic possibilities here. On the one hand, for Milgauss lovers, there is the sad possibility that Rolex may discontinue the entire collection. If that doesn't happen, Rolex may introduce a new Milgauss reference made of titanium. Is the latter a far-fetched possibility? Not really. With the introduction of the Deep Sea Challenge, Rolex has already released its first ever titanium watch, so it will be great to see the metal incorporated into other collections as well. However, one clear reality is that many enthusiasts are eagerly anticipating what Rolex will accomplish with the Milgauss line this year. Moving on, Rolex Datejusts are really hot on the market right now. Lately, they've been selling out quite well, and especially for women. With that being said, feminine watches are smaller than their masculine counterparts, so given how women seem to be really interested in Datejusts, Rolex may be cooking up something interesting. Would it really be considered unexpected if a 37mm stainless steel version rolls out for the ladies? At this point, it would be difficult to say yes. Also, we shouldn't be too surprised to see Rolex being adventurous by trying out some vibrant, exciting dial colours for the Rolex Submariner. The Tiffany blue dial on the Oyster Perpetual was met with a warm reception, so who knows, we may be getting a red dial on the Rolex Submariner soon. With all that being said, let's talk about the pricing. For the past 2 years, the 1st of January has marked an important date on the Rolex calendar. But for the benefit of doubt, it's the day that marks the official price reviews, or better still, increments annually, and quite expectedly, it has happened again. It's really difficult to blame Rolex for raising their prices. At the moment, the costs of basically everything, including the materials needed to craft a masterpiece from Rolex, has risen in recent years. And even more damning, the world is facing a crippling inflation. Basically, every brand out there is increasing their prices, and Rolex is no different. Another thing we'd like to add is that the annual price increments are far from outrageous, and as a matter of fact, they mostly lean towards the precious metal versions. Looking at all Rolex collections, the average price increases in 2023 were around 3.45%, and in monetary terms, over $700 USD per reference, with the two-tone and solid gold references being the biggest risers, while their stainless steel counterparts just barely increased. Some people can argue that a Rolex watch was already too expensive, and even more so now that the prices have increased again. And in a way, it's hard to say they are completely wrong about it. Also, while it's a common knowledge that Rolex watches get traded at a premium on the pre-owned market, there's a sense of worry that it may not really happen for long anymore. You see, now that Rolex produces more watches, and the prices over the last few years would make it harder for the average person to buy, it's not so hard to imagine regularly seeing new models in the glass cases and waiting lists to get smaller as a domino effect.